اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده سبحانه وتعالى ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونثني عليه الخير ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا إنه من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له الذي خلق الإنسان وعلمه البيان وزينه بالأكل وشرفه بالإيمان. نحمده تعالى أدبنا بالقرآن ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا حبيب الله مرتضى مصطفى مرتضى محمد عبده ورسوله أدى الأمانة وبلغ الرسالة ونصح للأمة وجاهد في الله حق جهاده وتركنا على منهاجة البيضاء على طريقة الوارية الجراء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك. اللهم فصل وسلم وبارك على هذا النبي الكريم. Viewers at home, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. You are welcome to yet another edition of your darling program, Islamic Perspective, on your darling television station, Ummatan Wasata TV. Today, we shall be looking at the question, why Islamic Perspective? And that is our topic for today. As in our usual tradition on this program, we shall have the verse upon which the discussion of the day will be based. After which, our regular guest will give us the meaning, the interpretation, the literal meaning of the verse, and thereafter we shall set into discussing the topic of the day. I am Muhammad Raji, your regular, your presenter and host on this program, and with me in-house is Malam Aminul Jato, our regular guest. Malam?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today, inshallah, we shall be looking at Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2 of the glorious Quran, verse 208. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا ادخلوا في سلم كافة ولا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين. صدق الله العظيم.
Meaning, O you who believe, enter into Islam wholeheartedly, perfectly, one and all, and do not follow the footsteps of Shaitan. Verily, he is your open enemy.
Alhamdulillah. That is the rendition, the meaning of the Quran chapter we are looking at today. That is the glorious Quran chapter 2 verse 8. Madam, in our last discussion, which was our maiden edition, we discussed the concept and outlook of our program, the Islamic perspective. Today we want to look at why should we have the Islamic perspective? Why should we have the Islamic perspective?
The answer to this question is not a far-fetched question at all. It's not far-fetched at all. Why the Islamic perspective? According to the verse we have read, Allah has constantly, in several passages of the Quran, informed us that He is the creator of everything. He is the creator of creation, the universe and all that the universe contains, human beings inclusive. On that basis, Allah wants us to continue to abide by the fact that He, as the owner of everything, the creator of everything, the designer of everything, is in the best position to determine how their life should be, the life of all that he has created should be. So this is a very fundamental issue. Just as we will expect that whoever is called a maker or a manufacturer of any product has the right to produce the manual to guide the user of the product. So if we are the products of Allah, it is his sole duty and responsibility to give us how we should live our life. That is why the divine perspective, which we call the Islamic perspective, is not only mandatory upon us, it is sacrosanct for us to be, as the creatures of Allah, to abide by.
Madam, in your interpretation of the verse we were looking at, Allah said we should enter into Islam completely, perfectly. Does it mean it is possible for one to enter into Islam partly and refuse to enter Islam partly?
Yes, the meaning of the verse is that Allah, who has created us, who knows our nature, knows that it is possible for us to go about this affair partially and not totally. And Allah wants it to be totally. Yes, it is possible for one to be partly in Islam and partly outside Islam. The meaning of that is that all the Mufassirun that have interpreted the verse are telling us that the Silmi that Allah says we should enter into is nothing other than Islam. That is one. Secondly, Kafatan, which means to enter it wholeheartedly or perfectly or totally, it means you have the mandate to abide by the divine legislation, which is binding on about all aspects of our lives. So when we decide to abide by the divine legislation in certain part of our life, aspect of our life, and in some other aspect, we decide not to abide by the divine legislation, it means we are doing that partially. It is not holy. So this is the meaning the Mufassirun have given the verse, that entering into it wholeheartedly means no reservation of any part of the divine legislation as applied to all our affairs.
The Islamic perspective you have just spoken of as being a thing that affects every aspect of our life. Does that mean that in the course of human sojourn on earth, in the course of our lives as human beings on earth, if we abide by the Islamic perspective in everything, does that translate into smoothness and happiness and joy and no economic crisis, nothing, just everything will go the way we want it?
Yeah. The meaning of that is that, as Allah has said, the verse is two parts. He has recommended, he has ordained that we should abide by his own dictates. And he immediately wants that we should avoid totally the footsteps of Shaitan, which is interpreted to mean any other way human beings decide to design for themselves, different from or in contrary to the divine ways. So the benefit and the basis of this directive from Allah is that when we abide by his own dictates, we start to have so many benefits. And if we go by the footsteps of Shaitan, then there are a lot of dangers, the disadvantages to our life. Well, as to the question of whether smoothly or not smoothly, in life, generally, it is the principle of gain and pains. Allah has established here, and as explained by the Mufassirun, that when you abide by the dictates of Allah, everything about life you have to undergo the process of sacrifice. You have to sacrifice some comfort. That is the pain aspect of it, in order to be able to abide by the divine dictates. When you do that, then you gain enormous. I use the word sacrifice because when you sacrifice one thing, which is called pain, the gain is going to be what you will benefit from your sacrifice. That gain is going to be enormous, in manifolds of whatever you have put into that effort. So whether the way of Allah or the way of Shaitan, of course, in the way of Shaitan, there are a lot of pains too. There could be some worldly benefits too. But the truth of the matter is that when you abide by the way of Allah, you make gains, you have little pains in this world and little gains. But when you go back to Allah in the hereafter, there is what we call an absolute eternal gain without any pain. But the reverse is the case. If you abide by the way of Shaitan, in this world, you are likely to have very little gain and enormous pains. And unfortunately, in the hereafter, you will not have any share of any gain at all. It's going to be pains continuously, everlasting.
Madam, if I understand your explanation, it means that as humans, our life does not end here on earth. And so, the Islamic perspective we are talking about, or the other perspectives, rather than that are against the Islamic perspective, will not end here.
Yes, like we have said, it is only in the book of Allah that Allah has informed us that He is the creator, and that He did not only create, He has made provision for us in form of guidance for us to know where we are coming from. And in that same revelation, He has also made it clear that this life in which we are in is a temporary one, that there is a permanent one, which is where we came from, which is from Himself. So in His presence is what we refer to as the hereafter. So it makes it very clear that in His own book, in the book of Allah, Allah has made it clear that the world is both here and the hereafter, and that He is the creator. Unfortunately, any other person that want to bring as rival to Allah does not have any book to make reference to that he or she or whatever that thing is the creator of the world. That's one. Secondly, there is no book. There is no book, there is no any clear information from anywhere about such thing, about any other person. So, and that is why it should be understood that the life here in this world, life does not end in this world, but there is another world, which is indeed the eternal life, not the ephemeral life we live in this world.
Thank you, madam. The Islamic perspective we have established in our last discussion that is going to permeate every aspect of life: economic, medical, technology, and we shall be given the Islamic view. And by this explanation you have just made is that whatever happens, Muslims must remain Muslims by holding onto the Islamic perspective, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has cautioned them as to the part of Shaitan. Are you saying that there are just two ways in the world?
Yes, it is very clear. Allah has told us in so many verses of the Quran that وَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ وَيُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ فَقَدِ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى لَا انفِصَامَ لَهَا وَاللَّهُ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. That means that Allah is making clear to us that there is His own way, and whoever adheres to it, whoever adopts it, has attained something that is going to be of benefit to him. But before you can do that, Allah says you have to reject the way of disbelief. So there is way of belief and the way of disbelief. There is way of Allah and the way of Shaitan. So no matter the number of ways human beings have come for themselves, Islam regards them as In fact, the verse that follows says, Alezina amanu yukhrijuhum min az-zulumati ila nur
Wallahu yukhriju alladhina
wallahu waliyyu allazina amanu yukhrijuhum min az-zulumati ila nur walazina kafaru awliyahum taghut yukhrijunahum min an-nur ila az-zulumati ulaika ashabun nar fiha khalidun. The meaning of that is that Allah is the wali, is the protector, is the guardian of those who believe in him, and that Allah is going to remove them from the darknesses in plural form into one single way, which is light. And that those who disbelieve in Allah, they will also have somebody who will be their protector. Allah calls it Togut here, which also implies in another place Shaitan. That Shaitan will also remove them from that single light to different forms of darknesses. Meaning that from these references from the Quran, there are only two ways. No matter the number of ways human beings have called for themselves, we have been told that Al-Islam, the way of Allah, is similar to Wahid, it's just single way. While all others, Al-Kufr, no matter the number of plants, no matter the shape, no matter the dimension, they are also classified or categorized as one way. So there are just those two ways in life.
The Islamic perspective, Muslims must believe that that is the only way for them in this world. And that is why this program is so designed to point Muslims, to lead Muslims to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the only way. Now, we have also said that the fact that one is not following the path of Allah does not mean that he will not have some enjoyment in this world. He will still have some enjoyment, but he would finally be led to perdition. Now, what does then the Islamic perspective, what does it guarantee humanity? Apart from, since if you follow the Islamic perspective, you are going to have pain. If you follow the path of Shaitan, you're also going to have pain. You are going to have some little joy here. You are going to have some. What does the Islamic perspective, in concrete terms, in this world, what does it guarantee, man?
Yeah, the Islamic perspective guarantees that if you follow the way of Allah, in this world, there will be what we call justice and equity, which, if when it exists in any society, there will be a peaceful life. Everybody will be given his or her right, and everybody will have a share of the natural resources Allah Ta'ala has endowed mankind with. And in the hereafter, you'll be in eternal bliss. But the other way around, if you follow the way of Shaitan, you may have what we call ephemeral gain in this world. But it's just transitory. It's a very, the Quran describes it as very small. When Allah compares them in the Quran, He tells us that it is not only very small, the comparison of the benefit of this world to that of hereafter is not only very small, it is even a deceit. There is nothing which we classify as enjoyment in this world that has any meaning to Allah. Allah has said it is going to be very, very small and also a deceit, something that will eventually end. So this cannot be compared with the everlasting bliss of the hereafter, which Allah has promised us. Aside from the fact that, as I've said, in this world we stand, if we go by the perspective of Allah, we start to enjoy what we call peace that is emanating from justice and equity, which is not guaranteed the other way of life.
Can we just say so? That judging by the happenings in the world today, it is clear that majority of the world is not following the Islamic perspective in majority of things we do in the world. That we now say that it is because of not following the Islamic perspective that injustice and inequality and equity is missing everywhere. despite the advancements in technology and ways of life.
Yes, we are going to have more time to dwell deeply into that. The truth of the matter is that Allah, there's what we call the principle of maker and manual. Is the maker, so he has the right to produce the manual. There is what we call putting the round pegs in the round hole. The round peg is our affairs as human beings. The round hole is the way Allah wants us to live. So they have to be fused together. Those are the things that can go together. Anything otherwise, there's also the principle. So anything you do otherwise from this, we amount to doing things in the wrong way. And the consequence is always pain and not any form of any benefit. And that is why in the whole world today, it is very clear that what is missing is lack of justice. When there is no justice, everybody is not granted, is not given his or her own right. So, and this will lead us to what we call oppression. Those who are strong will oppress the weak ones, and this will lead to indiscipline. That and which will give birth to what we call corruption, and that is why in the whole human society, all these elements are present, and that is why generally in life there is problem. When you hear that one nation is going to war with another, it means there is an element of pressure of one side by the other side, because they have refused to allow the equity and justice that Allah has established, has asked us to establish in Islam. And that is why, as for Muslims, we do not have any other option than to abide by the Islamic perspective.
The Islamic perspective is what we have been looking at, and we have been looking at why do we have to follow the Islamic perspective as Muslims in everything. And from the discussion so far, we would decipher that the only source of justice and equity in this world is the Islamic perspective, is abiding by the Islamic perspective. And that is the only thing that can bring justice and equity within the human society. Any other perspective will lead to anarchy, no matter how much wealth is created, no matter how much weapon is put in place. There will be anarchy, and there will be problem in the world. Madam, having gone this far, are you saying that when we say the Islamic perspective, are we just talking of just one way of looking at a thing?
Islamic perspective, as we have said, is the divine way of looking at anything. And Allah has told us in the Quran that there is nothing about life that He has left unexplained in His own book, in the Quran. There's nothing Allah Ta'ala has left out without explaining them in the Quran. So Islamic perspective is the divine perspective, but it explains the fact that it explains all aspects of life does not give us any option of wanting to think the other way. So that is Islamic perspective.
The Islamic perspective is what we have just looked at, and inshallah in our next edition we shall be looking at how do we implement, how do we go about this Islamic perspective in our contemporary world. Inshallah, until the next edition when we shall be meeting again, I am your regular host, Muhammad Raji, saying Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.